One of our favorite sponsors is back with us, Sunset Lake CBD.
Yeah.
If you're looking for CBD that actually does what CBD is supposed to do, look no further than our friends over at Sunset Lake.
Let me break it down.
Break it down, Mel.
They're sustainably farmed, meaning they avoid pesticides and use sustainable farming practices to preserve the land for future generations. 1. 2, farm to table. They ship the CBD products straight from their door in Vermont directly to your door wherever you're at.
Now that's cool.
And third party tested. They test everything with a third party to ensure quality, dosage, and safety.
You got to go over and check out sunsetlakecbd.com. They have so many products. Break it down for them, Apple.
Well, they've got some new stuff going on. Like they always had pre-rolls, but now they got really cool packaging for it. And you can get CBD pre-roll flights of all their flavors. You can get the heavy hitter flight that also throws in some of their Keef blunts. They have a new CBD recovery body lotion.
I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the other?
The other one with arnica.
The extra strength muscle rub, 3,000 milligram with 5% lidocaine.
So look,
Oh, yeah,
if you're
lidocaine.
sore, this is the stuff you want to rub on your body to make those aches and pains go away. They even have CBD infused coffee, so you can have coffee without the little jitter that you get from caffeine, and you have it in the morning and you start your day off right. Your body feels lubricated. You're going to sleep good.
Yeah, and also they have, if you kind of forget to reorder, they've got subscriptions.
And they're giving the No Simple Road family 20% off.
20% off.
Put
with
in the promo code NSR20 when you're checking out at sunsetlakecbd.com. You're going to get 20% off your entire order.
NSR20.
And don't forget those cute little gummy bears.
That's right. sunsetlakecbd.com, one of our favorite sponsors, is back. You know, when I moved up to Portland, well, actually, when we moved up to Portland, one of the things that I loved about coming up here was that there was Grateful Dead family that owned businesses up here.
Yeah.
And now, 6 years later, one of those businesses actually is sponsoring No Simple Road.
It's a trip.
Yeah.
That is Fire on the Mountain, y'all. If you haven't been there to go grab a bite to eat, it is time. It is a new year starting. It's time to go try something new, or it's time to revisit those old favorites.
Yeah.
And
What can I expect?
You can't go wrong with the bomb-ass chicken wings. And I have to say that if you are an onion ring fan, they have the best onion rings you have ever tasted in your whole entire life at Fire on the Mountain. They brew their own beer. They've got the best desserts.
They have the best fried pickle spheres, not like pickle nickels, the spheres, like when you bite into
not spheres,
it.
Spears.
That'd be interesting. A sphere.
I guess a sphere would be a ball. Excuse me. It's spheres.
They did have apple spheres.
Yes.
They didn't call it spheres, but they were amazing.
That's something cool about Fire on the Mountain too, is every month they have at the 3 locations here in Portland and the 2 in Denver, they have like rotating different sauces, and they have different desserts at each location.
Also different, like this was just this past week, was buffalo chicken spring rolls.
Okay,
So
I'm here for that.
They've got so many different things that it behooves you to visit them on a regular basis so you can find some new favorites.
And if you're not in Portland or Denver, you can go to portlandwings.com and get yourself some of their dope ass swag. Like I said, this is Grateful Dead family, and when you go there, you can definitely tell that one of us owns the store. And, grab yourself some swag, get yourself some sauces, have a little party at your house, and, you have a whole Fire on the Mountain thing going on. So go check it out. 3 locations here in Portland, 2 in Denver, Fire on the Mountain. Speaking of Grateful Dead family, let's just say Shop Tour Bus is our longest reigning sponsor of No Simple Road.
Thank you for believing in us for such a long time, Shop Tour Bus.
I mean, we are working on like 4 years with them.
It has been amazing to see them growing as we grow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like we've been growing together this entire time, and they just keep getting doper and doper.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, go to shoptourbus.com, or on Instagram you can go to @shoptourbus and check out the Grateful Dead inspired designs they have. They are always coming up with new rad shit, you guys, and these aren't your old tired lot designs. These are something new and fresh. They're going to come to you in a hand designed one of a kind box if you request it, or an all over printed box. And they throw all kinds of extra stuff in there too. It's not just the shirt, hoodie, sticker, whatever that you ordered from them. It's all kinds of rad stuff that they surprise you with when you get this box. So you're not just getting your order, you're getting a keepsake box, you're getting all kinds of extras, and they also include miracle bootlegs in some of the orders. So you never know if you're going to end up with a Grateful Dead cassette bootleg.
And they just got a restock of bootlegs, so I think your chances are better.
And if you got a big rack of bootleg tapes that are sitting around the house collecting dust and you don't know what to do with them, think about trading Shop Tour Bus. They do trades, and you know what would happen? All those bootlegs that you have just sitting around doing nothing would end up in the hands of the Grateful Dead family and making people really happy. And if you want to be really happy, when you check out at Shop Tour Bus, put in the promo code No Simple Road.
No Simple Road.
One word, and you're going to get free shipping because, like we said, they're part of our family, your family, Shop Tour Bus.
We're so excited to tell you a bit about today's sponsor, Music Masters Collective. They are a nonprofit organization that produces unique music events, providing opportunities for fans and artists to meet and collaborate in an inspired and creative atmosphere.
Music Masters Collective events give you the opportunity to learn from world-class musicians like Otil Burbridge, Steve Earle, Richard Thompson, former members of the band, the Milk Carton Kids, Nikki Glaspie, the Fab Four, and Sean Colvin, and so many more.
At an event like the Milk Carton Kids Sad Song Summer Camp happening this July, you can expect immersive classes, evenings of entertainment, excellent food, and a space for a lucky group of folks to learn, co-write, workshop, and perform with like-minded peers, all with the guidance of Kenneth Pattengale, Joey Ryan, and some of their favorite songwriters. This all-inclusive week in the Catskill Mountains of upstate New York is guaranteed to be magical. Scholarships are available and spots are extremely limited, so visit www.sadsongsummercamp.com/simple to learn more. That's www.sadsongsummercamp.com/simple. Check it out.
Hey everyone, Chris Pandolfi from the infamous String Dusters here to let you know that my podcast, Inside the Musician's Brain, is back on the airwaves for Season 4, which means it's time once again to get deep with influential musicians from all across the musical landscape to really understand and translate the lessons of success, failure, inspiration, and hard work that are behind the music and the artists that we love. My guests this season include Rachel Price from Lake Street Dives, Sam Bush, Chris Wood, Chris Funk from The Decemberists, Lindsay Liu, MC Taylor from His Golden Messenger, and more. Check us out, and thanks for listening.
We have officially made it to the last week of 2022. Like, what? Wait, today's Friday, so it'll day after tomorrow is New Year's Eve. I can't believe it, man. Hey now, No Simple Road family. What's up, everybody? How's it going? This is Aaron.
This is Mel.
And this is Apple.
Yeah, I was thinking today, remembering at the beginning of the year, last year,
Last year?
This year.
Oh, I was going to say, dang.
I was concerned about if we were going to be able to get enough guests to fill the year up. That's a real thing that I thought about last year, man.
Well, it wasn't a worry now, was it?
No. I'm definitely not doing that this year.
Then I think that a thank you and a gratitude is in order for that, because that's a literal prayer answered.
Well, yeah, absolutely it is, for sure. Yeah, and it's also
it's the
it's also a stupid head trip overcome.
Exactly, and that's why it's like we are all laughing, like whatever. But when stuff like that happens, we got to call it out because it's something that we thought we weren't going to, like, you're like, what are we going to do? And lo and behold,
and
almost 300 episodes in.
And finishing the year with this episode is super special.
It's special for a lot of reasons. We have the one, the only Jay Blakesberg and his wonderful, beautiful sidekick daughter, Ricki Blakesberg.
Yeah. This is going to be, you're going to really, really enjoy this episode. We had a blast. They came to the house. This is here. We did this here in the studio. This isn't a Zoom call. And we've known Jay for a while now, since I can't remember where we first met. I think it might have been
Skull and
Roses.
2019. Yeah.
But it's always been like, we're all working and we're doing stuff, and then we
and he's very, very professional
and
when
very
he's at
busy.
work. Yes.
Yeah. And and then we saw each other at Peach, and we had a couple of minutes to rap for a few, and then that was it.
Me and Apple had a cute moment with Jay while you were inside of the
He was off doing something, and we were sitting on the hill waiting for him. And Jay walked by, and he goes, "Oh, no simple road. Well, two of you or something."
Yeah, and then he took a picture of me and Apple, and I was like, "It's your time to take a picture before we hit it big, Jay." And he got a picture of me and Apple, which we haven't seen yet. But,
this is when they were coming up.
But it was really cool to have these little moments with Jay. The last Skull and Roses, I didn't. He was so busy working. I saw him, but I didn't. We didn't connect. But you guys did.
That's a dude that's like literally everywhere. If something's happening, Jay's there, and it's like, I don't know how you can be everywhere at once. That's a talent.
Yeah, when he has a way, like
Everywhere
it's
that
Skull and
matters.
Roses, when you see a huge crowd assembled, it's usually Jay getting like this huge picture. He did that. I turned around to Skull and Roses. I couldn't see him, but I saw like all of a sudden the bleachers, everybody was in tight and everything. And look, and there's Jay getting everybody to squeeze in to take this amazing picture, capturing a bunch of the audience. And I remember at Skull and Roses talking to him for a moment because we had our new cameras and we were using them. And I said to Jay, I was like joking around, like, if you need to borrow mine. And he's like, you know what, Apple? You know what the best camera is to use? And I was like, no, I thought he's going to be like model something. He goes, whatever you got.
That's the truth. Ruth.
Dang.
That's hard won experience talking right there.
Yes, it is.
I'm sure that everybody listening knows who Jay is, but if you don't, he is the man behind so many iconic photographs that have been with you your whole life, and you didn't know it. Or you did. Yeah. So many pictures of Jerry. Everybody. It's not just the Grateful Dead.
No, you look through his work. I had in the 80s and 90s. He had did so many covers and photo shoots for like Rolling Stone, everything. I had so many of his pictures I didn't realize were his until I saw a bunch of them. More recently. It was like I had that hanging on my wall for years when I was growing up.
Yeah, it's like the band that you loved, seen the way that you always remember them. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like if you never got to see the band and have like an image in your head, but you had that photo or that, Relix magazine or the Rolling Stone, you had that view that Jay created.
Yeah.
That stays with you forever.
The images that he's created or that he's captured.
Yeah, captured.
Are the way that many of us picture our favorite rock stars in our minds. From seeing those photos for so many years, when I think of Jerry, I think of that iconic photo that he took with Jerry pulling his glasses down. Or
Yorma.
Or that picture of Yorma.
First.
Yep.
Gnarly, crazy-eyed, wackadoo picture.
And some of the Flaming Lips ones too. The bubble at Coachella. That is huge.
Yeah.
An incredible shot. And he's on the stage, he's off the stage, he's in the bleachers, he's like everywhere. And then to have his daughter here with us, who was the inspiration behind creating Retro Blakesberg, which is what we're talking about today, talking about the book and the
Instagram.
Exactly. And to have them both here and just to see them playing off of each other and like
It is so cool.
it was a treat. It was beautiful.
And then the night before they came over here, we went to a little like local pub up here,
Laurel Thirst.
Laurel Thirst Tavern, and he was putting on like a slideshow of his work, and retro Blakesberg, and we got to go hang out and see that, which was really cool
to celebrate your birthday. It was on your birthday, babe.
Yeah.
And to hear that talk, and like he really packed the place, and it was so funny and interesting and fun to watch. And
it really does underscore to me, and this is something that's come up a few times lately on the show, I think we actually talk about this in the interview, is like how in the live music scene, Grateful Dead family in particular, though, if you are passionate about something and you're coming from the heart, the thing makes space for you and gives back and lets you do your thing. And we have witnessed that firsthand as No Simple Road. You know what I mean? Like, I remember reaching out to Terrapin Crossroads, and we weren't that far in to No Simple Road. We were a couple years in at the most at the time.
I mean, a couple years is half of No Simple Road's life, you know?
Well, still in the life of a podcast, that's not that long. And like being allowed to podcast from there was
monumental,
a huge milestone for us. And like,
absolutely,
I remember feeling like, wow, the energy of the Grateful Dead family, whatever that is, the community is opening its arms to us, and like we need to show up for that.
Yeah, basically Phil had you in his living room. That's kind of how like that.
Yeah.
Terrapin Crossroads was very like homey and like such a great vibe, and like just like it wasn't quaint. It was like
groovy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was super groovy. And we were invited to share our story and with the Higgs, thanks to them for coming out and, you know, doing their performance and being on stage with us. But we were open armed, accepted.
Yeah. And just seeing how Jay's career has been so DIY by him in taking chances and being at the right place at the right time,
and even learning what type of photography was going to pay the bills,
right?
But just by thinking,
and then
like critical thinking,
and then Ricki having the idea of like, hey, Dad, you have all this film stuff that nobody's seen. Why don't we curate something with that? Like,
paying homage to Dad.
It's dope, man. The whole thing is really cool.
Yeah.
Well, this is another really good example of something amazing that happened through what we went through in the last few years.
Yep.
This gave the time to go for Ricki to go through this archive, which you'll hear about, and to pull this all together and be like, Dad, you're dope. I want to celebrate you.
And I want to show
this together.
all the people that are my age who don't know you.
Yeah, and this book is amazing.
Yes.
It tells Jay's story from being a kid and picking up a camera and just starting to take pictures to, it's like 4 chapters through different decades, and this is all before he started shooting digital. So it's really a look into him growing up and everything, and it's amazing what this man has been through, and he's still just kicking it better than ever.
He's like, he seems like he's his 20-something-year-old self.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem, he seems ageless, and is my point. Like you know what I'm saying?
I
like
do.
There's no like 30s, 50s, 40s. Like it doesn't matter with Jay. He's doing his thing, and I'm really proud of, you know, somebody that, like you said, DIY, you create your entire like livelihood
and life.
And how smart he is to want to pass that on to his kids too.
Yep. That's a special legacy.
Yes, very much so.
And it
is not too late to order Retro Blakesberg.
No.
For any occasion, New Year's, you got a new coffee table, you need a cool book for it, like,
or just because
you love Jay Blakesberg, just because you're a music fan, like this is an excellent, or a photography fan for that matter, this is a really great gift to give someone. And I really implore you to go order this book because it was really special.
And also make sure you go to the Instagram at Retro Blakesberg too, because a lot of these photos and other stuff that didn't make it into the book is up on that Instagram site. And it's pretty magical, man. See, these images, a lot of them like really do transport you.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's a feeling for me when I see those pictures of the dead lot in the 80s and early 90s. It's a feeling that's attached to the picture. I remember that. I know what
time machine.
I know what that smelled like. Like I know how the sun felt. I can remember how my clothes were. I remember the sounds that were there and how excited I was, and like that feeling of being 18 and out of my mind. And it was, so it's a magic portal. These things are magical.
Well, another cool thing was it was on Thanksgiving. So your birthday was on the 22nd. I think Thanksgiving was a few days later. Yeah. And we had some friends, a new friend, having Thanksgiving with us, and he happened to be a photographer. And after everybody went to bed that night, Johnny, Brian, Danae, and myself stayed up, looked through every page of this book. And he, because he's a photographer, he was explaining the lighting. He was explaining the lens. He was explaining look how he got this and this over here. And it was so interesting to see that book through a photographer's eyes, like to literally turn the page and be like, oh, look at this lighting.
Reaction.
Yeah, man. And it was just like, again, it's the book that keeps on giving. It really is.
And this is the conversation that keeps on giving too. We're gonna enough about us. Let's,
well, it's really been all about Jay.
Yeah. Let's do the business real quick and get him to the interview.
I just want to say really quick, Jay, thank you so much for being on No Simple Road again and coming to our home. Ricki, thank you for what you've done, and we really are forever fans of your work.
And we love you guys a whole bunch.
Yes.
Follow No Simple Road at No Simple Road on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
And TikTok.
And TikTok.
Woohoo!
How's the TikTok going, Apple?
I got to do some more updates.
All right.
Yeah, you do.
It's going.
All right. And
it was the weekend. We kind of took a breather for a moment and stuff, but I'm going to be doing a same thing. There's going to be a recap of the last year happening on TikTok all week.
Oh, shit. All right. Yep. Go to www.nosimpleroad.com. You can sign up for a tarot reading. You can get No Simple Road merch there. You can check out the calendar of events and come hang out with us when we go to shows. You'll see where we're going to be. You can sign up for the No Simple Road newsletter. There is a link at nosimpleroad.com right now to get your tickets for Skull and Roses Festival, April 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd in Ventura, California, 5 days.
And there is also a link for our fundraiser in February 15th in Asheville, North Carolina. No Simple Disruption. So head on over there. If you are on the East Coast, come join us for this incredible fundraiser. You will love it.
Yeah, man. Oteil Burbridge. It's John Medeski and friends. It's Oteil Burbridge, John Medeski, Vernon Reed, Brian Jackson,
Maggie Rose,
DJ Logic, putting on a show at the Salvage Station in Asheville,
with
North
poets,
Carolina.
Us emceeing, and just whatever shenanigans we can get into.
This is going to be a hell of a night. Tickets are $20 advance and $25 the day of show. And like Mel said, there's a link up at nosimpleroad.com. You click through and grab your tickets and come hang out with us in Asheville on the 15th of February. And there's a link to Jenny's book up there.
That's right.
If you want to pre-order Jen's book, that's up there. And then you can go to patreon.com/No Simple Road and help the No Simple Road family stay alive.
Yeah.
Basically,
stay afloat. Well,
man.
Look, 2023 is coming. We have so much going on in 2023 already, and it hasn't even happened yet. And we could use your support. We could use your love. We could use your dollars. We could use your hundreds of dollars. We could use whatever you want to give us.
Here's the deal. We're pushing 300 episodes. We want to do 300 more. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is if you guys all pitch in and help us get there. So like I said, patreon.com/No Simple Road. You can give as little as $1 a month. If you want to do something that doesn't cost anything, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And I think we do have a new review.
Yeah, we do have a new review. Yes, we did.
Someone heard the cry?
squeaked in.
Right at the end.
Oh,
Thank
man.
you so much.
Thank you so much. I don't even know what it says yet, but thank you.
That's I didn't read it. I read it earlier, but this is from Canis Funk. This came in on Sunday.
Okay.
Twice as nice. 5 stars. Really enjoy the new format. Who doesn't love twice as many No Simple Road episodes each week? Happy holidays, Mel, Aaron, Apple, and NSR family.
Aww.
See y'all in Asheville.
Oh, shit.
Canis Funk? Hell yeah.
Somebody is going to be joining us in Asheville. And again, the Asheville, we've been wanting to go for a long time. And it's amazing the way we're going to be seeing
Thank you, Canis Funk.
Thank you so much for ending our year off
December.
right.
Yay.
Woo! Canis Funk.
See?
We love you. See you in Asheville, baby.
I hate to be like, all right, on to the next thing, but I'm going to be on to the next thing. Look, we need a January review, so hook us up, y'all. That is Apple Podcast, and that helps us, other people find out about the show and all.
And then we have the ever fun Tepid line.
971-808-1524. That number again is 971-808-1524.
Yeah. So that is, we've asked for all kinds of things, but this is where you can do whatever you want. I always say it's like open mic. You call in. I mean, we love the trip reports because we know everybody's going to shows.
I have a suggestion.
What's the suggestion, Aaron?
If any of you are at MSG, just call in from the show.
Nobody did it for
Goosemas.
No, I'm not Goosemas. Trey and Goose. Nobody did it for that.
For Taboose.
Nobody's doing it. There's like thousands of fans. Nobody there listens to No Simple Road.
No Simple Road listeners at MSG.
Yeah, we know somebody other than John B.
That's right.
Got to see one of these shows.
You know what? Call the John B line. A few weeks ago.
And Nathaniel.
Oh,
He
Nathaniel.
sent us a video.
Yes, he did.
All right. So that's the whole thing. That's all the business. And that is that. So without further ado, the No Simple Road crew gives you
Jay and Ricki Blakesberg.
What the Dr. Dre story? What now?
We'll start with Dr. Dre.
So, most people know of me as hippie jam band, Grateful Dead photographer, and somewhere along the way in the 90s, I worked with this art director named Dave Cucurito. Haven't talked to him in years and years. And he had moved over from Musician Magazine to The Source, which is like the Bible of hip hop magazines. And I shot a bunch of features for him, but I did 2 really important covers for him. I did Snoop and I did Dre. And for the Dre cover, I flew down to LA and went to this photo studio that we had rented and waited there for 7 or 8 hours, and Dre never showed up. Right. And the hip hop world runs on clocks like that, right? That's typical scheduling. And then I finally got a call from the publicist who said that Dre had been in the recording studio the entire night and would not be able to make the shoot. Could I come back tomorrow? And I said to the publicist, it was a woman named Lori Earle, and I said, yes, but I need to fly back to San Francisco tonight because Primus is playing at the Civic, and I promised them I would come and shoot that show. And she was actually Primus's publicist also because they were both on Interscope Records.
Okay.
And so she's like, no problem. We'll fly you back. We'll fly you up and back. No problem. So I go back to Primus, and thank God that I did, because they had the greatest nitrous party ever in the backstage dressing room. Right?
Show those photos.
Well, I've told that story before, but I took it out. So, do you know that photograph inside that Garcia record with Merle Saunders where they got the tank of nitrous and they're all sitting in the dressing room at the Keystone, Berkeley, or whatever Keystone it is? It's like that. So everybody in the band and all the crew guys and all their friends, and we're all in this big dressing room with all the mirrors at the Bill Graham Civic, and we just all have balloons, and it's just like one of those classic things. So thank God, because you never want to miss a good nitrous party.
Nope.
Backstage with Primus in 1995. So anyway, so I fly back down to LA the next day, And I go to the studio, and we have a wardrobe stylist. It's a magazine cover, and the premise of the cover story is that Dre is leaving Death Row Records, right? Because Suge Knight and him have this falling out. And so he's leaving Death Row, and Death Row's logo is an electric chair. So we go down to the Hollywood prop studio and we rent an electric chair, a prop electric chair, right? And that's the cover photo, which you saw on the slideshow last night here in Portland. And so that's the main shot. And really, I was just in a studio with a white wall and an electric chair. But we had like all this wardrobe. We had a gazillion T-shirts in every color and sweatpants. And, we had a wardrobe stylist, and they told us what size he is and what he likes to wear. And we had 6 8-foot tables laid out with every possible wardrobe combination you can imagine. So Dre gets there 3 hours late with an entourage of 15 or 18 people and 3 or 4 SUVs and a limousine. And they walk in, and he looks at all the wardrobe, and he says, I don't like anything here. We're going shopping on Melrose. So him and the entourage get back in their vehicles, and they drive back up to Melrose Avenue, and they go shopping, and they come back, and he's wearing a black T-shirt and black sweatpants. Okay, like Adidas with a white stripe down the side, right? Same thing that we had 90 different versions of, right? So, but they're gone for 3 hours, right? So we've already missed the whole first day of the shoot, okay? We come back, and now it's in the afternoon, and he comes in.
What are you doing during all this time?
We're just sitting there waiting, because it's also 95. So, did we have cell phones? I guess we did, but we weren't really in touch with them.
Yeah.
We had probably had our Motorola flip phones.
Right.
Because you said 3 hours he's late, then another couple of 3 hours.
Because he's supposed to be there at 11 in the morning, and he gets there at 2, and they go shopping. He gets back at 5, something like that. Maybe it was 2 hours and 2 hours.
But yeah.
Hip hop time. So anyway, so he comes back, and they come in the studio, and they lock the door, and they say no one is allowed in the studio because Dre has a hit out on him by Suge Knight. And I'm just like, what the fuck? I'm just this hippie photographer from San Francisco. And so we lock the doors. We do the shoot of him with the electric chair and, color and black and white and different formats of film, do some close-up face portraits, but it's really just a room with a white wall. And so I say, can we do some shots outside as you're leaving? They go, yeah, but you got to make it fast because there's a hit out on Dre, right? So we go out, and I get him to stand on the limousine and sit on the limousine and on the back, and behind me are his 10 or 12 guys, and they all got semi-automatic weapons, but because they're this is serious shit.
You got a hit out on you. It's serious shit.
Yeah. And so, and again, I'm just dude, I'm just the fucking hippie photographer from San Francisco. I do not want to go out in a hail of bullets, in some Western movie with a hip hop, soundtrack.
Jesus Christ.
Anyway, so we do the outdoor.
That would have been a hell of a way to go, though.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody wants it, but that would have made some kick-ass news.
It would have made a good story for Ricki to be telling this on the
my dad. Been born.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
So, right. Oh, yeah, you wouldn't have been born because Sam would have had to tell it because he was 1. Exactly. Anyway, so that was the shoot with Dre, but it was you can't make this stuff up in the world of rock and roll, and I feel very, very fortunate that I have proof of it all because I photographed it.
That's true.
You can see it on Retro Blakesberg, the Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Retro. Hi, Ricki.
Hey, Jay.
So hey,
let's do that.
If everybody hasn't figured out right now, we have legendary photographer Jay Blakesberg and his fantastic daughter Ricki, who's in graduate school, who created the Retro Blakesberg Instagram account. So thank you.
Is the creative mind behind the book that is now here sitting on the coffee table.
So welcome, Jay and Ricki, and let's hear it, Ricki. Let's hear your side on how this came to be.
Yeah, so Retro Blakesberg started in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. I went into my dad's office and I sat him down and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, I have this idea." And he's like, "Okay." And usually he usually says no to me at the time. And I have this idea. I think that we should make an Instagram entirely curated of your film photos. And he's like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it." Can you curse?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm like,
Yes.
Can you? But Ricki, what's your background? Like, why was that a thought even for you?
Well, I was feeling actually a little bit lost at the time. I was a photography major in college. I've always been super into photography and art, and I've always really admired my dad's work, but I couldn't figure out what my connection was to it. And I had been working with him in his studio, kind of like going through his archives just because he needed a little extra help because it was a pandemic. Like his employee wasn't coming in and he needed extra hands. So I was like starting to get to know his archive in a new way. So it sort of influenced my decision of I was like laying in bed one night and I was just like, he has so much shit. Like this needs to go out in the world. And also I wanted a younger generation to see it. I feel like a lot of deadheads know his stuff. And are very familiar with these, Grateful Dead, Jerry Garcia band, Phish photos. But that whole story you just told about Dr. Dre, that isn't something that a lot of people know he's even taken those photos. And I think that for me, it was really important that kids my age saw that stuff, and we could bring it to life.
Yeah.
So also, Ricki was underemployed at the time, right? So Ricki's business over the last few years has been doing social media marketing for bands and music festivals. And so leading up to the pandemic, she was working for a number of music festivals. And of course, they all just disappeared and evaporated, as we know, like everything else. So she lost basically her entire business, evaporated overnight, as those things just kept getting canceled, in domino effect. And so her mind was certainly spinning, and she has a creative mind. She's a lot like me with a lot of ADD, and she's always thinking and always coming up with ideas. And so I think that, and I don't know if you remember this, but you first started an Instagram page that was a retro page, like a fashion thing, and she was looking and finding stuff online. I think you made 2 posts and you're like, I don't want to do this. And that's right after that is when she came to me and said, I have an idea, right? Cause she's like, what do you think if I do this fashion retro Instagram thing? I'm like, that sounds cool. And then that lasted a week at most, or 3 days, and then she came to me with that idea. And then I just started giving her film photos, and I'm not allowed to touch that page. I'm not allowed to do captions. I'm not allowed to choose photos.
Oh, so all the captions are you, Ricki?
Yeah, all of them are me. I mean, I talk to him about the stories because I want to, hear about them. But now I'm so familiar with the archive. It's really fun. We'll be going through his photos together, and I'm like, oh, I know where that's from, or I know this, Lewiston, Maine, and stuff like that. So it's been really great to be able to work with him in that regard.
What does that feel like for you, Jake? That is a really big deal because most of the time parents don't really get that accolades.
Right. So, well, the first thing is that as photographers, and certainly as aging photographers, right? So I'm 61 years old and, imminently. And,
61 years young 61 is what
years,
I would say.
61 years psychedelically young.
Yeah, baby.
So, one of the things that we certainly think about is, where does our work go? What happens to our work when we can no longer work with it? And so, and it's a twofold thing, because Ricki and I have a separate business called Retro Photo Archive, where we actually acquire dormant photography collections from people that shot music and pop culture in the 60s and the 70s and things that, right? So
that's rad.
So there's people that are out there that maybe they shot for 5 years here in Portland at the Crystal Ballroom in the 70s, or if I don't know if that existed back then, or whatever the room might be. Yeah. And then they went on to have a different career, or they did something else, because it's not easy to make a living as a music photographer. And those photos have been in a banker's box in their basement or their garage for 40 years or 30 years. And so we're slowly discovering these collections, and we're buying them. And what's important is to keep that work in those photographers' names. Some of them are deceased. Some of them are elderly. Some of them haven't done anything with their work in many, many years. And so we're sort of resurrecting this work. So for me as a photographer, getting to be, and I'm by no means ready to retire or give this up or anything like that. Yeah. But having a 25-year-old daughter, 26-year-old daughter, 27-year-old daughter, I say, okay, now I can pass this on to her because she has interest, and not every kid is interested in what their father did.
My kids aren't starting a podcast.
That's why I mentioned that, because I know that, you have kids, and just because they're part of you doesn't mean that they like the stuff that you do or are into the same stuff, And
so to me, I look at Ricki and I say, okay, my work can stay alive for the next 50 years. Aww. Right? And to me, that's really important. But part of that is, I look at my body of work and I feel like it's important historically. I think it's important from a monetary standpoint in terms of generating revenue for, my daughter as a career.
It's a legacy.
So that she doesn't have to go work at Burger King and manage the archive, to do that. I want her to be able to focus completely on the archive, which is why we started Retro Photo Archive. And we have some incredible stuff. I'm going to tell you a quick story.
Please.
You don't got to be quick, Jay.
Ron Rakow managed the Grateful Dead from 67 to the mid 70s. Okay. When I did my book, Eyes of the World, the Grateful Dead photography book 5 years ago with Josh Barron.
Yep.
After we did that, Josh and I were talking, we were saying, let's work on a new book project. What do you want to do? And we started talking about doing something on 1975, specifically the one show they did in Speedway or in Lindley Meadow, which was the free concert they did in 75, right? You guys know about that show. Yep. 1975 is a very unique year in the Grateful Dead history, right? They played 4 concerts that year. 3 of them were billed as Jerry Garcia and Friends, but was the whole Grateful Dead. One of them, one from the vault at the Great American Music Hall, was the Grateful Dead. So at first because so many photographers shot that Lindley Meadow show in Golden Gate Park, we were like, this would be great. So we started doing all this research, but then we felt like we were pigeonholing it too much. So we said, let's do a book on just 1975. So we started interviewing people, and Josh found Ron Rakow because that's when they were editing the Grateful Dead movie. The band was on hiatus, deciding if they were going to go back on the road. They were getting ready to record Blues for Allah up at Weir Studio that they were building. All this stuff was happening, right? Grateful Dead Records was still happening. They had put out Wake of the Flood and Mars Hotel on Grateful Dead Records. And so we started interviewing Ron, and he says, by the way, in the 60s when I was working with the band, I had a Nikon camera and I knew how to use it. And I've got thousands of photos of the Grateful Dead that nobody has seen. So it took a year, and eventually I connected with him down in Southern California, went into a storage facility and found nothing, went to a second storage facility, and eventually found a notebook that said 710 Ashbury, 1967. And then found 9 more notebooks like that. And I scanned 900 photos of the Grateful Dead from 67 to 73 that nobody's ever seen.
And these photos, they are just unbelievable. Like the color in them, you can just like feel the energy pulsing in these images.
So he really knew what he was doing.
Yes, he knew.
Wasn't bullshit.
Yeah. Well, he went on to take photography very seriously post Grateful Dead, shooting medium format and studio lighting and, travel photography all around the world and nude models and large format and all this stuff. But, but it was all color. And I'm like, where's the black and white? He goes, shot thousands of rolls. I'm like, where's it? He goes, I don't know. A year later, I go back down through Southern California for Dead & Co. at Hollywood Bowl, stop at his place to have lunch. He hands me a suitcase. I'm like, what's this? It's like, it's the black and white negs, right? So there's another 100.
And just for no reason, just to hand them over.
Another 100 or rolls of film, including 10 rolls of film of them recording the first record in L.A., first Grateful Dead record in the
Golden Road
in the studio, first record. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So there's pictures of the airplane and Janis Joplin and the human being and the mamas and papas and hippies and freaks and the Dead and Mountain Girl and all these incredible photographs. Tim Leary, like he hung out at Millbrook. He
shit.
You know who Art Kleps is? He's the guy that wrote the definitive biography of Millbrook. You know what Millbrook is, right?
Yeah.
He wrote he went to Art Kleps's wedding, as a guest and photographed Tim Leary officiating it, right? He has photographs of Leary leading guided LSD trips at Millbrook, in 67. Peggy Hitchcock, who was Billy Hitchcock's sister, that's who owned the Millbrook mansion. That was Ron's girlfriend in the 60s.
So there's something to all of this that is striking to me is that the energy of the Grateful Dead and the Grateful Dead family is so intense that stuff finds where it needs to be without you having to do a ton of legwork. Like that stuff wants to be found and knows who to go to get itself out. That's nuts.
Like why did he just gave it to you? Like here it is.
So he still owns it, and Ricki and I manage it.
Okay.
Because he wants this work out there as well, and it has commercial value.
Absolutely.
The picture. I don't know if you saw the cover of Relix magazine with Jerry on it. That was his 80th birthday or 85th birthday, 80th birthday, right? 3-4 months ago. Was a picture of Jerry in the recording studio with a microphone from 1967 when they were recording that record, and it's a Ron Rakow photo, and they interviewed Ron. Ron wants to get his work out there, and the band has access to these photos. They can use them. I mean,
the idea of like Retro Photo Archive and Retro Blakesberg is like, we want people to see and experience these photos that they haven't before. And not everyone knows like the proper means to do that. And nowadays we have the platform to do it. Like we have social media and we have the internet, and it's easy for us to be able to get it out there and like reach people who've never seen it.
It's an education too, because of Dead and Company, there is an entire new generation of heads that are out there that need to know where they come from. That's important.
Well, because a lot of people are like, just started going because of John Mayer. Right. And then they were like, wait, this is actually really rad. Like, I'm going to stick around. But I agree. I think that there's a lot of young kids. At first, when I was going to the shows, I'm like, name one song. I'm like, oh, I'm such a douche that I'm asking that. But,
but also, besides young fans, there's like spouses, new girlfriends, new boyfriends, So like one of the, you go to Mexico playing in the sand, and one of the partners is a big deadhead and the other one's along for the ride. And then all of a sudden they're saying the same thing. Oh, wow, this is pretty cool. Oh, wow.
Good point, Jay.
So where's the background? Where's the history? Where does this fit into the pop culture landscape, right? And so, with the Grateful Dead, there is so much history in that because of the 60s, the Summer of Love, even going back to the roots of the Grateful Dead as a jug band and a folk artist and bluegrass and blues, but also, the birth of Silicon Valley, the beat poets, the beats, right? So it's beats, hippies, Dead, psychedelica, Silicon Valley. They go from a regional Bay Area band to a nationally touring band. They go from this mega psychedelic band with, Live Dead and the early records to American Beauty and Working Man's Dead. They essentially invent Americana music. Right. And then from there they go to Wake of the Flood. Is that the next studio record after those?
I think so.
Mars Hotel, Blues for Allah. They get weird again. Do you know what I mean? And they, if you were to, raise your hand in 1967 and say, who's the band least likely to succeed? People would probably say the Grateful Dead, and the band most likely to succeed would be the Jefferson Airplane, right?
Yeah.
But here we are 60 years later, and the Grateful Dead zeitgeist is still, bigger and stronger than ever was. And the testament to that is the songbook, right? It is truly one of the great American songbooks, right? Yeah. And Bobby and Phil and Mickey and Billy and every cover band around the country continues to reinvent and reinterpret that. I mean, look at what Bob Weir just did at the Kennedy Center, right? With the symphony. He's reinterpreting and reinventing this music in new, incredible ways, right? and Bobby has even talked about how, this music, how this music will be touching people 100 or 200 years from now, and where it fits into that landscape. And I truly have to believe that, 60 years in, the way that it touches it. And so going back to the visual aspect of what we were just talking about, what Ricki was doing, is that you're right, is that all of this history now is coming out visually. And we continue to look for new archives, and we want to keep building this Grateful Dead archive because I think that it's important historically to be able to share this.
And I think that we like a lot of what you're saying too is like right now we also are living in this era of nostalgia,
Yes,
and I think
Ricki.
that's like a huge point of Retro Blakesberg is we're seeing like so much come back to the surface, whether it's fashion or music, or pop culture. Like it's just so relevant. So I feel like that's what Retro Blakesberg and Retro Photo Archive is about. It's like touching on this nostalgia of like what we're trying to grasp and like relive.
I just know that when I got turned on to the Dead, after my first show, it was so much. It was so big. And I had no context for that. I didn't know anything like that existed. And to have your mind just blown apart like that, I didn't know where I was. And if it wasn't for older heads and photos, I wouldn't have known where I came from anymore. And in a lot of ways, those old pictures and old recordings are responsible for putting me back together again in a lot of weird kind of ways, like seeing those old photos of Leary and Garcia and just the band back in the 70s, because I came in the late 80s, seeing the band back in the 70s gave me context of what I was dealing with and helped me kind of like find my feet in the world. It was a lot.
I love that.
And there's also a lot of other visual aspects to the Grateful Dead experience, particularly the icons, the posters, and of course the photographs of people like Jim Marshall and Baron Woolman and Herb Green and then you get into the 70s and other photographers, including, myself and Ed Pearlstein and Bob Minkin and Susanna Millman and, so on and so forth. And there's this kind of thread of visual history. The thing about the Grateful Dead is that they always let anybody bring a camera into a show, right, from the beginning of their career until Jerry Garcia, passed away in 1995. Anybody was allowed to bring a camera in there, which is why they're such a well-documented band. Other commercial bands stopped that practice in the 80s and the 90s. You needed photo passes and you needed credentials and things like that. And so there's not that same kind of thing unless those, and nowadays every band has a photographer with them on tour because you have to feed that social media machine, like, what Ricki also does with some of the bands she works with. There's that constant need, feed that Jones, feed that machine, feed that social media thing. But, back then, Paul McCartney or the Rolling Stones, maybe they had a photographer and maybe those photos are around, but it wasn't as important back then to those bands. But now here we are 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years later. And if you look at this body of work as a whole, whether it's the Grateful Dead or some other bands, you really want to see it from the beginning to the end.
Just to touch on something that I think my dad does that's really powerful too, is his photographs of, the Grateful Dead. He has all of these people dancing, it's not just the band. Like he was capturing the whole thing. And I think that is like one of the first things that really attracted me to his body of work, because it's really different. A lot of people are like always focusing on the stage, but he's like, let's focus on the energy. And it's like going back to what you were just saying of, where did I come from? Who's my community? Who are these people? They're seeing the people that, saw it in the 80s. And that's one of my favorite things about Retro Blakesberg, the Instagram, is when I post these photos, all the people who are commenting, I was there, or I see me, like it's this moment that they get to relive. And that's so special.
It's wild.
Well, that's why people keep going back to shows, right? Because you want to relive these incredible experiences with brand new people, and the songs even sound brand new because of how they do it, but it's this familiar, I want to go back, I want to feel that same special feeling. I want to ask a question though.
Hang on.
Well, I was just gonna say, that's what last night when we were watching the slideshow and looking at your book, that's what brings back the goosebumps even more than seeing the band. We all seen the band last night. We were like looking at each other like with our I remember those fashions. Pictures. I remember seeing that dude because they went to all the shows and everything, and there's not a lot of that. And you see that, and that takes you back to being that fan in the crowd standing next to that dude. That's why I love the Hippie Chick books. I mean, you have that whole book is dedicated to people that were fans
and connecting to that music. And one of the reasons why I've always been a photographer that's wanted to get my work out there, whether it's in book form or in magazines or whatever it might be, is because, and there are a lot of photographers that just took pictures for themselves and put them in shoe boxes, right? Is because I want those photographs, when you're looking at it, to have that visceral feeling that brings you back to that moment, whether you're there with your lover, your friend, your future spouse, whatever it might be. These photographs, and that's why a lot of people, when they see my photographs and they're like, I was at that show, and they want to hang that photograph on their wall, let's just say, it's because it brings them back, right? And music does the same exact thing. For me, like if I'm driving in my car and it's the right, everything, the stars are all aligned, and let's say Hey Jude comes on the radio, like it brings me back to being in my mother's car in the 1960s, like driving to the beach, to the Jersey Shore. Or if it's the 80s, it might bring me back to like a time where I was listening to some sort of, the Flaming Lips or something like that. So these songs bring you into these moments, and like you said, they give you goosebumps and the hair stands up on the back of your neck. But I think that photography does the same thing, and that's why people connect to it. And that's why when you guys were watching that last night, you were having those experiences.
And I take lots of pictures. Well, we all do. I do more of taking pictures of like in my phone, thousands of pictures and stuff. 85, 90% of them are of us and our friends and our community. That's the ones that are so fun, because nobody's every like you said, everybody travels with photographers and stuff. There's better ones that they're getting of me taking a video or stuff. It's all about capturing us and capturing my friends. Like I've gotten so many good shots of these two sharing a moment that they don't know I candidly got it, and then I wait till the next once you've come down and landed again from it, and it's like, check this out, and they're like, you caught that moment of us having that moment.
That's the beauty.
It's the goosebumps.
Yeah, it's been incredible. I just wanted to ask, because at 16 is when you started. Did you realize, probably not, but like that you're part of you're a historian. You are a music historian up all the way till now, still currently doing that job. Like, was that something that you wanted when you were younger, or was it just much more natural and much more just open armed, you know?
Back then we were just in the moment. I was just trying to figure out my place in the script as a teenager that was, had discovered psychedelics and the Grateful Dead. And just that was part of my identity, right? Yeah. Who I was and who that guy is took the cool photo of Bob Dylan or Neil Young or Jerry Garcia and made an 8x10 and, stuck it on your bedroom wall.
But that's what I like so much about Retro Blakesberg is, we do it in decades. So like the first is the 1970s, and we have all these photos that my dad took of like him and his friends in high school getting up to no good. And I think a lot of people haven't seen those photographs, but that was sort of like when his spark was starting, when he was getting into it.
I want to tell you.
Which is cool wait, hold on. Which is cool to see the photographer.
That's what I was going to say.
I got to know you better.
I want to tell you what that did for me. So I've always known about Jay Blakesberg, the photographer, like this icon photographer that shot Jerry, and, and we've met, but it was still, I didn't know the person. And seeing that stuff was like, oh,
it put together a lot
that's who you are. Like,
and you're referring to looking at the book and
seeing those pictures of you and your friends doing the same shit me and my friends were doing.
U.S. bombs, all the things.
It was like, oh, he's like,
that's
it's
what
not
we
an
did.
icon, it's the person.
Well, even for me, I think too, like, looking at all of his photos, I think I get so caught up with like, oh, this is my dad's job. This is what he does.
Yeah.
And then like experiencing his archive like this, I was like sometimes getting emotional because I was like, he loves this, like there's these moments where I'll catch him sometimes if we're at a concert and I see him and he's standing there, with his hands on his heart and he's looking at the music happening and he's just lost in that moment. And it like grounds me because I'm like, holy shit, like, this means more to him than just like his job. It's his passion. Yeah. And it's so special,
It's totally special. And, when I found out that you were curating this and you were involved, I mean, my daughter is the same age basically. And Aaron's dad, all his family's in the entertainment business. His dad, his stepdad, his mom, all his sister, like our daughter. And to see the connection and to see the working together, it did something for me. It did something really solid for me because I realized like, again, that's a special, even though your father-daughter, there's a secondary bond. It's not just, oh, you're my kid, you're my dad. This is like a shared passion.
Totally. And
for like this is like the cream of the crop. Well, this I'm pointing to the Retro Blakesberg book. It's to me that's like the cake topper, the balloon in the air. Like this is like the best thing that I think you can do with your family is to create something so personal, so passionate, and for everybody. That's the thing. Like this is not a selfish endeavor at all, in the contrary. And so it's just it speaks very high. That's why I said about the historian, because that's what you both are and what you're doing, and you're continuing it. It's not like, oh, we did it and it's done. It's like a continuation. When you find yourself in the Portland area and you want to smoke some cannabis or get some cannabis inspired products, you want to go to Define Premium Cannabis. They have one location in Hillsborough to serve you, and our man Apple just happens to work there. He is going to set you up when you come in with anything you need. that they carry, of course. You're going to let them know, hey, I've got a headache, or hey, I fell at work and my shoulder just hasn't been right, or you know what, I'm tired, but I can't fall asleep. And he's going to take all of those things into consideration, swirl them around in his inventory brain, and give you the best product that you could possibly get. And when you let them know that you listen to No Simple Road, he's going to give you a 10% discount and a free t-shirt. So when you wear that t-shirt back the next time, because you're going to love those products, you're going to be like, hey, I have my t-shirt on and I love No Simple Road. They're going to be like, boom, 15% on top of that 10%. So like I said, if you love Portland, you're visiting, you want to come get high, or you just want to relax, come see us at Define. You will not regret it.
What is a city without its music?
The legacy of the New York Philharmonic is incredible.
Nearly 2 centuries of history. That's a lot of music and a lot of stories.
I was sitting on stage for the very first time thinking, I can't quite believe this is happening.
Join me, Jamie Bernstein, as we explore the history of the New York Philharmonic. It's the NY Phil Story Made in New York, a podcast about a city, its people, and their orchestra. Listen wherever you get podcasts.
And when we first started the book, it was a photo book that was a coffee table book of photos that I shot on film. But as Ricki started pulling these photos together, I saw it becoming my visual autobiography. And that's when I was like, okay, because these things evolve. It's not just like, we didn't come up with an idea and say, hey, we're going to do a book and it's going to be separated by decades. And at the beginning of each decade, I'm going to write an essay and I'm going to talk, none of that happened. She just started pulling book, images together. And then I started to see how her mind was working, and then we have to organize it. How does it make sense?
Yeah.
Does it make sense to put a picture of a guy doing a bong hit in 1978 in my bedroom next to David Bowie from 1991? Not really, right? So then we started saying, okay, we're going to do this by decade. And then I started saying, because a lot of people say to me all the time, oh, you got to write your autobiography. You got to write your stories.
Jay.
Blah, blah, blah. Your life has been so fascinating. And, partly because I put myself in those situations, it's had fascinating elements to it. But that's when I came back to Ricki and said, I'm going to write these essays that's going to introduce each of these sections. And then her brain starts spinning, and then she starts rethinking about how she's going to lay these photos out and what makes sense. And so there's the 1970s, which is high school, and the photos that I took in high school of artists like Bob Dylan and Neil Young and Lowell George and John Cipollina and Roger McGuinn and Willie Nelson and Leon Russell.
And also just your friends, you and your friends.
And my friends.
I
right.
love that
and we mixed that all
that's
together.
My favorite.
And then we got to the 80s, right? And that's when I, go to prison, get out of prison, move to the Pacific Northwest, move to Olympia, Washington, get re-inspired as a photographer because of the community that I'm with, which is essentially, the people that I lived with in Olympia, Washington, we were essentially a creative commune. Everybody was a musician, an artist, a dancer. People were always doing creative projects and we were always collaborating, right? So it really was, for lack of a better term, a creative commune. So then, we're like, we need, we weren't sure if we were going to include photos like that, but then it made sense to include photos like that because it showed the path, the creative path.
This like evolution, I think is what you're getting at. Like that was the most important part for this book. I feel like for me is, in the 70s, he's more amateur and he's kind of just like having fun and learning the camera. The 80s, he's there and he's kind of getting back out there. He's shooting his friends. He's getting excited. He's like really in the music. And then the 90s, you start to see.
Well, even the late 80s, I need to start making a living because I'm graduating from college and, and
life got real.
And even when I was in Olympia, I supported myself. I was not, I didn't have any benefactor, put it that way.
Send them our way.
Right. Yeah. I supported myself. But when you lived in Olympia, Washington in 1983, your rent was $110 a month.
Oh my gosh.
And even when I moved to the Bay Area in 85, and we live with roommates. Again, my rent was like $135 a month, $150 a month. We lived with 5 people in the same house, but but nowadays, if you lived in San Francisco or the Bay Area and you're just out of college and you're 23 or 24, 25 years old and you're sharing a house with 5 people, you're each paying $1,500 or $1,200 a month, right? And so it's a little bit harder to be a bohemian artist on that level when you're trying to figure out how to pay your rent, right? And so I was able to essentially develop my craft as a photographer because my overhead was so low.
So that's why you're so cognizant of what you just said earlier. So that she can actually focus on getting everything and making it beautiful and having that thought time. It's so hard when you have to go to work, clean up the house, do this, that, and the other. And then that creative time just kind of shrinks a little bit.
Mind is mush.
Yeah. So that's a real... That's just good parenting. So throw that in there.
Right. So the mid '80s into the late '90s is when I really started to say, okay, I can make a living as a photographer. I'm getting published in the Golden Road. I'm getting published in Relix. But how do I get into Rolling Stone? Boom, it happened. 11/11/87. I shot U2 downtown San Francisco, free concert. I had been reaching out to Rolling Stone magazine, the photo editor, Jody Peckman. She was a deadhead, and we had a mutual friend who was a bigger deadhead, she went to high school with. And so my friend introduced me to Jody, the new photo editor at Rolling Stone, and I started submitting photos. And 6 months later, she calls me up and says, "Hey, Jay, it's Jody at Rolling Stone. I have your big break. I need you to go shoot the free U2 concert in downtown San Francisco." And immediately within weeks, I was shooting more assignments for her in LA and San Francisco and other Grateful Dead related stuff. But like I said in my presentation last night here in Portland, most magazines didn't care about the Grateful Dead, right? So that's where that wasn't my bread and butter.
Yeah.
It was bands like U2 or Nirvana or Soundgarden or Jane's Addiction that were just starting to happen that the magazines were interested in. And that's how I was making a living, shooting for guitar magazines and music magazines and getting those assignments. And but still shooting the Grateful Dead at the same time. And so, that was a big break for me. And I think sorry to interrupt, but I think something that also is interesting with my dad and something that he's taught me for my whole entire life is if you want something, you really have to go for it and push yourself and put yourself out there to do it. And with the Jody Peckman story, I've heard that story so many times, but it never gets old because it's inspiring for him. He's constantly calling give me a job. I want to do it. He's ingraining them his name.
Yeah. He's making himself known.
Exactly. And it's important,
Yes,
we just had a conversation about this very thing yesterday regarding Peach Festival.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
tell us more.
Well, so his dad, old school. Oh man, Old school Vegas. He did lots of shows that Showgirls and just lots of different
musical variety shows.
Yeah, musical variety.
On the Strip.
That's epic.
He is Vegas.
In mob Vegas.
Where are the photographs?
I know, I was just thinking that too.
Oh, Meyer Lansky was his boss.
Whoa.
He told the story of Meyer Lansky spitting on him one time because he was pissed off.
Trying to leave.
Just
but growing up with that, I was telling her yesterday, I learned from him the way you learn from your dad about how your word is everything. And you need to stay in people's minds, even if you're not working with them, so that when it does come up, you're the thing that they think of, because especially now we're 32nd generation, our attention spans suck. So if you're not at the top of the list in somebody's head, next, and Jay, here's the thing that gets me is I understand now after doing this show for 5 years of getting to talk to my heroes and having some of the dreams that I had when I was younger kind of coming true. But you're able to, at almost 61, to sit there and look back on how 40 years of stuff that you've done. Is it fucking surreal to you, man? All of it?
Maybe surreal is a description. I think when I look at that body of work, and because we've scanned a lot of that film for various reasons, I get to look at it and see it. And when I spend the time and get away from the task of the moment with my ADD and the work that really needs to be done, and I start getting vortexed into some photos I took 20, 30, 40 years ago, I think that the word that comes to me is I'm really proud of what I did. Is that I'm really honored that these people gave me the opportunity to photograph them. And it's funny, when I first started working with Neil Young 30 years ago, on a regular basis, their manager, they didn't know who the fuck I was. I was just and Neil even called me that kid with the camera for a while, right? So nobody knew that I was going to still be the guy still standing and still have their shit together and you could call me up and say, hey, you remember that picture that you took 30 years ago? How do I get that? Because we need to use it for a new record or whatever. And I could say, no problem. I can have that to you in 3 hours, right? And there's not a lot of people that can pull that off, right? And so nobody knew that I would be the guy that's still standing, has their shit together, and is still working on a professional level, all these years later, and
consistency
and consistency and maintaining the professionalism. A lot of people, drugs and alcohol get in the way, and it's not easy to maintain a creative career for decade after decade and actually make a living and be able to put your kid through college and and have them still work for you and still generate revenue and have a staff that works for you. Most photographers are lone wolves in their basement and hovered in front of a computer these days. And I'm fortunate that my business has succeeded, I would hope, based on my talent and creativity.
Absolutely.
At the point where I can have staff. I've got 4 people that work for me now, and
you really have only to thank yourself. And I don't mean that in a
don't get to his head.
No, well,
careful there.
Well, I don't mean it like nobody else was there for you, but I'm saying nobody can make you do what you did. So, nobody can make you show up to these shows and be consistent and be calling the Jodies and the Johns and the whoever's. Like that's where I'm coming from.
When I first started, I took every single shitty fucking job that paid me $70 or $200 or $100.
Didn't matter.
Because the last thing that I wanted to do was go get a job, a real job. And I always say that, my career, I'm successful in my career because of fear. And of course, fear is the worst thing that you ever want to have. But you know what I was afraid of? Of having to get a real job. Okay, that's motivation. That's what I was afraid of. Like, I was just scared of having to get a real job, right? Because I didn't know nowadays at 60 years old in a world filled with technology and things that I've learned and know over the years, there's a lot of things that I'm super interested in that I could probably have maybe had a career in. But back then I had no idea about anything but photography. It's what I loved. It was passion. It was my passion. I was inspired by it.
When you were in school, were you taking any other classes?
I did a little bit of video work, but that was such an early part of video in the early 80s. I'm self-taught as a photographer. I started out, I started taking photographs of bands on stage, and I very quickly realized you go and pick up the new issue of Rolling Stone magazine or Relix magazine, 9 out of 10 times there's a portrait on the front cover, not a live shot. So I was like, okay, light bulb, if I'm going to make a living, I've got to learn how to shoot portraits. And so I taught myself how to do portrait photography.
So even that thought, who would think that? You know what I'm not Jay Blakesberg, but that's not common, to piece those things together to be like, okay, this is what I'm seeing. That means this is what I got to learn how to do.
And plus I was inspired by those photographs that I was seeing on magazine covers.
Okay.
Whether it was a contemporary photographer or somebody like Irving Penn or Richard Avedon or, and there's a lot of photographers today that have no point of reference to the stuff that happened 30, 40, 50, 70 years ago with these most iconic photographers, these iconic artists, whether they're street photographers, a Lee Friedlander or a Robert Frank or a Danny Lyons or Deanne Arbus. And so even Ricki goes back and looks at that stuff and she's like, holy fuck, I love this shit.
We bond very much on that, besides just music photography or whatever, my dad and I are always sending each other photographers that we love and admire. And I think that's a huge thing for me is I'm really into fine art photography. And, for me, that's a huge goal of mine to, get my dad out of just the music photography world and, showcase his art in different ways. Because I think that a lot of people know him as this music photographer, but some of these portraits he has, of Joni Mitchell, where he's using the wrong film to create, her in a blue setting. And these portraits are just beautiful and it's art.
Like fashion photography.
That's huge for me too in this is the fashion element. And I really want my dad's work to go to that, I don't want to say next level because it's just more like a different arena, you know, because it's really broaden it. Exactly. Yeah. It's really powerful.
It's so awesome.
Give some other stuff,
you're
love,
like
Jay.
One of just to see his biggest fan. Yeah.
You're
like his biggest fan.
Biggest critic.
You too.
Yeah, biggest critic.
But that's
too.
also awesome to see last night, seeing you two and your playful relationship, like with each other, the ribbing each other. I almost snorted when you're like, you screwed up the slide. Where's the roll? and everybody.
I fixed that this morning, by the way.
I think that was your fault.
Well, here we go. Oh yeah,
You're the one who made the slideshow.
It was an oversight. You missed it.
I wanted to bring something back to the book for a minute because I talked to you for a moment last night about it when we first saw you, when I came with Jenny and we saw you. I don't know if you did it on purpose or not, but it is one of the most interactive books that I've held in my hands in a while because of the way you set it up. You have to, I started thumbing through it like you do with a picture book and just looking at the little captions. And then I caught the C notes and I'm like, oh shit, I had to go back several pages and it's a heavy book. So I find myself there holding this heavy book. I got a bookmark in the back for the captions pages so I can flip back. It makes you really stop and appreciate every photo. Yeah. And then you go to the back, you read the captions and stuff, and then you go back to the photo and look at it again.
Right. So it
makes you slow down and appreciate every single photo and look at it differently.
When I started writing those long essays at the beginning of each decade, you know, and there were 2,000, 2,500 words, there was still so much more I needed to say that I just couldn't put into those essays. And so I realized I needed to do quote unquote extended captions. And it didn't make sense to put them. And we had long conversations with Ricki and me, and our book designer lives here in Portland also.
He's also like my best friend from college.
Oh, the one that you shouted out yesterday?
Yeah, so Molly
Shout
Fulton.
out Molly.
Yeah.
And so Molly, so the three of us would be like, what do we do? And that's when we said, okay, we're going to come up with this idea where we're going to put the extended captions in the back under a note section. And if a photo has you have to come up with these templates, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And so like if it's a full page photo and there's nowhere to even just put the most basic caption, which is who it is, the date it was shot, and where it was photographed, then we would, if there was room on the next page to put it, we would do it. But if it was a full page spread and a full page spread and a full page spread, there's nowhere to put it going three back. So then it would go in the back of the book. Okay.
But Apple, I like what you said, because that was like a huge intention of mine, is like, I want you to be able to really experience that photograph and like get lost in it. And I know for me, when I sometimes am looking through photo books, it's easy to start reading, or you get overwhelmed by the text. Like I have such ADD. I see the text, I'm like, no, I can't commit.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So like for me, like to really spend time with the photo and then be like, cool, I have my interpretation of this image. Now I want to go read about it and see where it was.
Oh, wow.
You know, like you kind of get your own experience, then you really like learn about it. And,
and then you go back to it again and again several times. And
on another note too, like we're so, like Aaron said earlier, we're like 30 seconds, 40 seconds scrolling. We're looking at it, but we're not looking at it. This has really changed it and made you study it, examine it, look in the background, look at the outfits, look at the sun. Like it really.
Nobody has fucking phones.
Jay, when you said that yesterday, I was like, well, we were seeing it.
The room
but
was
it
silent.
just,
you're like, you're recording it. You're like, yeah.
Well, I was being good last night. I was being really good last night.
The room was silent. When you asked that question, the room was silent, like looking at the picture, like, what is missing?
It's
and then
like
when you said it, it's like,
because it's such a part of us right now. And so it is a beautiful historical account of a time when we didn't have that, and people were dancing to dance. They were looking at the band because they like the band, not because they wanted to go.
We were all in the moment to be in the moment, together. Not to be on social media
like
the next
post
day.
about it or say I was here or something.
Yeah. Well, what does I said something somewhere? I said the normal attention span nowadays is about 8 to 10 seconds.
What were you talking about?
I was about to.
Yeah, exactly. What did you say?
If Ricki inherited anything from me, it's my major ADD. Right?
It clearly has helped, though.
Yeah,
like I think a lot of people will say that, maybe like as a negative or to give people a heads up of why they're not paying attention. But it's perfect. You got to run around. You got to focus. You got to pay attention. The ADD kind of works to your benefit as a concert photographer.
It certainly has worked for me. I don't know if I could function, because my wife and people have even said, why don't you get on drugs? Why don't and Ricki is no longer on it, but she, in college and high school, she was on drugs to help her focus, and it actually worked for her. And I actually never believed in doing that. And when I watched how it helped her immensely, my attitude changed. But for me, I always felt like I'd been successful in the way that I did my work and I did my life without it. I didn't want to risk changing that because I didn't want to upset the chemistry that allowed me to be creative the way that I've already been creative and be successfully creative in my own little weird world. But, I literally have been in the middle of paying bills and, signing checks that get printed out of the printer and signing checks and remembering something I didn't do and literally walking away from signing those checks and going to do something else and then coming back and be like, oh, wait, I think
maybe I have ADD.
Yeah. And really that, I love reading books. I read books every day, all the time. But it takes me forever because a lot of times, I'll read something and something will catch me and my mind wanders and I read 2 pages and I'm like, okay, I just read 2 pages in that book and I didn't actually read one word in that, and I have to go back and read it again.
Yes.
And that's only because my mind wanders. And I know that sometimes it actually bums me out and makes me sad. And people who don't have that, can't understand that concept, can't understand how your mind, you could be in a conversation with somebody and your mind just all of a sudden wanders. And my wife looks at me all the time. She goes, you didn't hear anything I said, did you? And I'm looking right at her and I'm having this conversation. I'm like, yeah, I heard that last word that you said about the farm, whatever. But she understands it, right? And it actually, sometimes for me, it bothers me because I feel bad that I can't stay focused. And it's not because I don't like you or I don't love you or I'm not engaged in what you do. It has nothing to do with that. It's actually a affliction, a disease. I don't know what the fuck you call it, but it's a problem that I cannot control.
Yeah.
It's beyond my control, and it's like it's the.
I like it when I like it when I'm telling a story and I kind of know that he's not listening, so I'm gonna keep telling the story, and I know he's gonna pay attention right when the really good part happens, I'm spilling the tea, and he's always like, "Sorry, what did you say?" Right. Can you go back? And I'm like, "Yeah, I knew you weren't listening."
This is fun. We have a rule in this house that was created years ago because not arguments but debates come up. We are not always paying attention, and we have a rule here now because there's 4 of us now. There used to be their son Simon. If somebody backs up that I'd like Aaron saying, dude, I told you that the other day, and I'm like, no, you didn't. If somebody else backs it up, then it's true.
If you got 2.
We look at it. It's like you were out on the patio too, and it's like, and then you have I second that. It's like, okay, I guess you did.
So it's a moral majority here.
Yes.
And then you have to admit that you weren't paying attention, and then you get to be told again.
I want to ask you something, Jay, about meeting the people that we look up to, because I know for me, prior to doing this show, I had a completely distorted view of the people that are making the music that we love and listen to.
First of all, we both thought everybody was high all the time.
I was like, they can't play these shows and not be high. But that's not what I'm getting at. After 5 years of interviews and talking to people, I've quickly realized that we're all fucking just human beings, man, doing our thing. And these guys just happen to be really talented at playing music. And it's actually deepened my appreciation for the music in a lot of ways. How has meeting your heroes changed for you over the years?
People have asked me that before, and certainly when I'm photographing somebody like Jerry Garcia, you kind of need to keep your shit together.
Right.
So as a creative person who's typically photographing these people for a purpose and oftentimes being paid to do that, it is my responsibility to come back with the goods.
Right.
And so coming back with the goods doesn't mean geeking out and fawning over the people and saying, oh my God, that Morning Dew you played last night in Oakland blew my, it's like,
that's not, cool.
You need to relate to people on a human level. And it's also changed a lot, and social media has done that because of the access that photographers have, is that there's a woman, her name is Jan Uelski, and she was a staff writer, editor at the original Cream magazine out of, Detroit back in the late 60s, early 70s, Lester Bangs, the height of all of that stuff. And she used to have this saying that she always said to me, rock stars are not your friends, right? Because that's what they said at Cream. And if you know anything about Lester Bangs, that was sort of the vibe. They felt like they couldn't be critical. They couldn't be authentic if they just were friends with these people, right? If they sort of do that a little bit in Almost Famous, there's a little bit of that vibe, like he's
was that not written about you?
He's the enemy. He's the enemy. And so for a long time I prescribed, or I subscribed to that philosophy. And then eventually that changed and I realized, you know what? These people are my friends and I'm a lot like them. I did a book in 2008. It came out and it's called Traveling on a High Frequency. And people were like, is that you that's traveling on a high frequency? I'm like, no, the people in the book, they travel on a high frequency. And so we just get to tap into that frequency. And when you realize, like you said earlier, these people are incredibly talented. So when you get to somebody like a Neil Young and you're around Neil and you watch him like interact with people and his eyeballs are spinning around in his head because he has even more ADD than us, because he's so creative at every moment of the day. It's sort of like that thing's just always spinning, that hard drive that's just always spinning because he's always thinking. And I find that a lot of musicians are like that, right? They travel on a high frequency and they're spinning. And so you have to understand that, right? And you have to work with that. And that's one of the things that I've learned is that, sometimes it's got to be all business. Like if Neil Young is going to give me 10 minutes to do a photo shoot, I don't have 9 minutes to tell him how much,
how great he is.
Heart of Gold meant to me in high school, right? Like I need to just, be ready, be prepared, do what I do. And if he wants to shoot the shit with me afterwards, then we can talk about, the car or, the guitar or whatever it might be. But I think in general, the goal has always been to treat them as humans and not as deities. And I never I never looked up to Garcia. I know like Weir has recently said things like, people treated Jerry like he was a deity and that was bad. And it was, Jerry didn't like it. Bob didn't like it. I think I just read this. Is this the Washington Post interview just from the other day?
Maybe.
I think he maybe mentions that. And so, I even when I was, tripping on, copious amounts of LSD at a Grateful Dead concert, I never thought that Jerry was God. I never thought that the band was God. I just thought that experience was elevating all of our consciousnesses to another level that was, and I think it was Jerry who once said, I'm just in it for the fun. Right? Because without fun in our lives, what are our lives? A 9-to-5 job?
Boring.
Right? Boring. Right?
Well, I think that's why also you've gotten so many of the stories you've gotten from these artists is because you're patient and you're not there to be like, oh my God, you're not fangirling. You're like, let's do this. And then
I think I'd be fanboying.
Sorry, fanboying. Fan-theying, theming. It's
whatever.
Who fucking cares? And like, I think that I'm like, and I think that's so important because then these people like really did open up. And that's also why they call you back because they're like,
and the other flip side of that too is you were talking about the energy of the shots earlier. Being a deadhead, for whatever that means, and understanding what a peak of a jam is, you have inside information on when to take the shot.
You have to.
Yep.
The best piece of advice I ever got from anybody about shooting a live rock and roll concert came from my Little League coach when I was 10 years old.
What?
And he said, anticipate the play.
Oh, yeah.
He still says that.
So if you're playing second base and there's a man on first and the ball gets hit to you, what's your play? You throw it to second base and throw the guy on first out.
Right.
So anticipate the play. Best piece of advice I ever got for shooting live rock and roll.
Yeah.
10 years old on the Little League field.
There was a shot last night in the slideshow of Bobby on stage and his hair is kind of flying in the wind and he's got his knee kicked back.
He's got the short shorts.
Yep. And I was like, that's Jay knowing the moment.
And I was 18 years old when I took that photograph. And it's knowing that music and it's knowing when to wait for that moment. And that's why a lot of people who are photographers, they stand around with their camera in one hand and a beer in the other. You're not going to get that photograph. You need to be, you need to be ready.
I've seen you working
at all moments.
Oh yeah. You're like at Skull and Roses, man. You were
Right.
We're like a praying mantis, like running everywhere.
Are you guys coming back to Skull and Roses?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Yep, I'll be there. I just got booked and confirmed. And,
so can I ask about that? Like at a young age, you're doing these concerts. You're paying for your own concerts at this point?
Of course.
What time does, like, at what point in your career does that change after the U2 thing?
Yeah, somewhere around the late 80s is when I'm starting to get photo passes and can, request credentials to go to pretty much any show that I want. I think that with the Grateful Dead, I think connecting with Bill Graham Presents, first I started getting comp tickets to Dead shows via the Grateful Dead and the people that worked for Bill Graham. I got them for the Grateful Dead through Bill Graham's office. And then when I photographed Bob Weir with Rob Wasserman, I did those portraits of him when they were starting their duo act in 1990. Then I could call Bobby's office and just request tickets and passes. And so from 1990 on, Bobby pretty much is where I got my tickets and my passes.
Jay hasn't had his finger up in the lot in a really long time.
It's kind of like that marker that lets you know that, well, shit, man, I'm part of this too. I'm not like an onlooker coming.
No,
I'm part of the happening, and I'm working.
I'm working.
Yeah.
And it's funny. People always say to me like, "Oh, can you help me get tickets?" Or "How do I buy tickets?" I'm like, I'm like such an idiot. Like I don't even know how to buy tickets for a show. It's just such a stupid
it's a good
thing.
problem to have.
Like I just
it is.
like I mean I don't.
Eye roll.
Right.
Okay, well, I want to ask a question, a little bit of a hard left, but okay. Well, back to when you were in jail and you said you were like growing sprouts and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Before, like,
I love that shit.
I want to know about your diet because you're touring just like any other musician, and it's not easy to tour. We talk to them all the time about like how do you stay healthy on the road and like all this stuff. What was your inspiration in the beginning? Because clearly you've had LSD. Well. And how do you keep it going? Both practical and like the origin.
Okay, I'm not completely clear on the question, but going back to the early days of tour, we used to travel in my '69 Chevy Nova. Saw a couple hundred Dead shows in that car, and we traveled with what we called the refrigerator of life. And it was an igloo cooler that was yellow, and it was stocked with just really good food. And that's how because back then when you were a vegetarian in the early 80s, there was no Whole Foods. There was no tofu. Like you couldn't buy things like that. And I lived in New Jersey. You couldn't even get avocados or kiwis or.
So how did you adopt that lifestyle?
I think I met a guy named Dana who was a vegetarian, and I became a vegetarian at age 20. 1981, January 1981, I ate my last piece of meat. And at first, there was political and social and hippie ideals behind that. And after you get to 7 years, at that point, like people say, don't you miss meat? And I'm like, no, I'm completely, repulsed by it. People are, and I don't really eat like fake meat products. I mean, there's been times in my life where I've eaten like the soy bologna and bacon, fake bacon and things like that. But, even that stuff is kind of heavily processed. So, I've been a vegetarian, getting close to 40, about to go into my 42nd year, I guess. And even in prison, I didn't eat any meat. I ate a lot of carbs and bad canned vegetables, and we had a smuggling ring in prison, and I discovered 500 5-pound cans of government issued grade A peanut butter back in a storage room, and we stole it and smuggled it out, and I lived on peanut butter and white bread that was stale in the prison system, and we had a whole black market going. I also discovered a few hundred pounds of government issue grade A cheddar cheese in a refrigerator back there. And we used to just chop off chunks of it and smuggle it back into the dorms, So
the refrigerator of life has gone with you this whole time.
It's just part of it. But so in jail, right? In jail, everybody's allowed to smoke in the dorms because that was really healthy. And so the butt cans were these giant industrial size vegetable cans, right? Like, giant institutional. And so in jail, you were allowed to have an iron to iron your pants in the drug program that I was in because I was a drug offense, right? And so, because, you had to have like really sharp looking pants if you're a drug addict. And so we would take that iron and flip it upside down into this can, this vegetable can, and I stole a stainless steel ashtray out of the drug counselor's office, and we cleaned it out, and we would smuggle eggs and cheese and bread and butter out of the cafeteria in our black market little trading zone, and every night we would make omelets and grilled cheese and shit like this. Like we had a whole fucking racket going, man. And
that shit.
Yeah, like we would trade.
You had
we
a
would,
lot in the jail.
I'd be like, hey man, I'll trade you 2 pounds of peanut butter for a dozen eggs, you know. And then so they would like smuggle them down from the kitchen to the storeroom where I was, and we would do all this bartering and
Literally.
and my job was to deliver supplies to all the dorms. So we would have to deliver these giant boxes with like 200 rolls of toilet paper, and we would take like the bottom 20 rolls out and put all this contraband in there, and then bring it into our dorm, and then I'd give it to the guys there that were the prisoners, the trustees, and they would take it out and they would smuggle it and they'd put it aside.
I love it.
We had all like, it was like the remember that movie The Longest Yard with
Yes.
Burt Reynolds, and you know, anybody like, remember he got the guy laid and he got Burt Reynolds laid, you know, like, you know, that was what it was like. I mean, we were, you know, we had a black market
Quite
going
literally the most wholesome black market ring ever.
Right. Well, you know what?
We're stealing eggs and cheese.
Right. But you know what the biggest commodity in jail was? White sugar, because everybody who was not a
Jonesing.
they were jonesing. So we were smuggling bags. We would take the 50-pound bags of white sugar and dump them into a giant clean garbage bag in a garbage can, put them in small like sandwich bags, and in our socks, smuggle them back and sell them or trade them, barter them for anything. You know, most people did cigarettes. I didn't smoke, so I did like orange juice and postage stamps so I can mail letters to my friends and, you know, shit like that. And but people would take like white sugar and put 25 tablespoons in their morning coffee because it gave them that buzz, right? Because they were drug addicts. And if you didn't get arrested for a drug offense, like you might have been a heroin addict, but you got arrested for breaking and entering, right? So you were robbing somebody's house. You didn't have to go to a drug program. Okay, so you're in jail and you're jonesing. And so we're smuggling white sugar, and that was their fix. That was their. They were feeding that Jones, man. So you know what they called white sugar in prison? They called it heron. Got any heron?
Oh wow.
So you know, just like, you know, crazy shit like that went down. So like I said last night, you know, prison was a dark, deep dark comedy. I think if I was there for 10 or 15 years, it would have been a deep dark bummer. And there's a lot of people that got arrested just a few years after me when Reagan and Ronnie and Nancy, you know, changed the drug laws and mandatory minimums, and my heart bleeds for people that spent 10 and 15 years in prison. You know, like I was in jail for just under 8 months. And very fortunate, because otherwise, if I didn't get out in 8 months, if I had spent 10 years in jail, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Nope. Ricki wouldn't be born. You wouldn't know who I was. I'd be selling insurance in like New Jersey, and you know, and having some horrible life. You know, who knows, right?
Gosh.
But you know what I mean? It's like, who knows what would have happened? But essentially, you know, the people who got arrested with less LSD than I did, and I got arrested with 2,000 hits. You know, the people who got arrested with 200 hits and spent 20 years in prison. I mean, my heart. I mean, I cry for that. You know, people's lives were ruined unnecessarily for something that we believed in as a spiritual sacrament, you know? Yeah. And so I feel very, very fortunate, and I never, ever take it for granted. And even though my prison experience was my prison experience and I made the best of it, and it, like I said, it was a dark comedy. Right. I still feel really, really fortunate that I did not have another experience, which could have easily happened.
I toured in 91 tour, Greensboro, North Carolina. One of the guys on my bus, Footbear, was selling doses in the lot. Show ends, no Footbear. We wait, every car leaves. We get kicked out of the lot, he's gone. He got popped with 2 pages. He did 20 years.
Right. For
North Carolina.
200 hits.
For 200
hits.
Yeah. It's fucked.
So, you know, I want to bring up one thing here, because I know we're going to start wrapping this up, because otherwise we'd be boring people to death if they'd have listened to me and Ricki and you guys for like...
I was going to say, we could talk all night.
For more than 60 or 70 minutes, which is
we're
probably
being professional. We're going back to that.
And you can edit this out if it doesn't work timing-wise, but I have my first solo museum exhibit up right now in New Jersey. And Ricki and I worked on this together. We we curated this with a woman at the museum, and it's called Retro Blakesberg, captured on film 1978, 2008, sort of follows a lot of what's going on in the book.
Okay.
And it's 125 prints over 4 galleries.
Wow.
It's the only Smithsonian affiliate museum in the state of New Jersey. And so, I went from that kid, with a bong on his chest at Englishtown at 15 years old to the person with a museum exhibit at a Smithsonian affiliate museum in New Jersey today. And so this is up until February 5th, 2023. Wow. And it's at the Morris Museum in Morristown, New Jersey. You can go to morrismuseum.org.
In your home state.
In my home state. And what's so ironic, it's about 20 miles away from where I grew up. And so I always,
boy makes good.
Well, it's funny because I like to joke, like in high school, we were like the stoners and people made fun of us.
Right.
And that kid's going to go nowhere. He's going to end up in jail, which I did, Right. And so, you leave high school, the town disgrace, and now I come back the guy with the excuse me, I'm the guy with the museum exhibit. Who the fuck knew, right? So
well done.
And it's really a beautiful retrospective of his work, and it's a cool little glimpse into what you can see in the book. So it's nice. You walk through the gallery and you just sort of see all of these artists that he's captured.
Where can people go to buy the book and also find out information on this too?
Okay, so and real quick on the museum exhibit. So there's 4 galleries. One is just Grateful Dead.
Okay.
One is just portraits. One is just live performance photography. And one gallery is early work, high school. And there's, didactic. So there's text on the walls and there's ephemera in glass cases. Excuse me.
Wow.
So there's a lot to look at. You need a good hour and a half to look through the whole exhibit. morrismuseum.org. Morristown, New Jersey, the Morris Museum. And the book, you can go to blakesberg.com, BLAKESBERG. Order books directly from me. We will sign them. We'll personalize them.
Check out the Instagram, Retro Blakesberg. Toss it a follow. I'm always posting about the book.
It's so good.
Yeah. And so that's where you can find out what we're doing. And we also have a new Instagram that we're just starting called Retro Photo Archive, what we talked about earlier.
Right on.
And Ricky's working on that.
It's all curated by me, baby.
Yeah.
Right on. Ricky, before we leave, what should people who don't know your dad's work and doesn't know your dad, what should they take away? What do you want them to know about your dad?
Well, it's actually interesting that you asked that, because recently we had someone reach out to us for an interview. And they actually found out about us through Retro Blakesberg, not his Instagram. And I think the biggest thing, it was a young girl. She's, I think, maybe 22 or 23. And she was just talking about how inspired she was seeing all of these photos and getting to live, going back to that nostalgia idea. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, the biggest thing I want people to take away from Retro Blakesberg is my dad is more than just the Grateful Dead, and his work is poetry and art and fashion and style and pop culture, and you can really learn so much from all of these images, and each photo is a journey within itself. So I hope that when people experience the book or the Instagram or an individual photo, that they're able to really get lost in that photo and take their own journey with it, and then maybe actually learn about the photo. Call back to Apple.
Dope.
So
yes. All right.
Right
Thank
on.
you guys so
Thank
much.
you so
Apple,
much.
Aaron, Mel, thank you guys so much. We love you. We
Anytime.
appreciate
Amazing.
this. Boy, I guess we probably could have kept going on for another 4 hours.
Totally.
So,
Easily.
so we will revisit once again.
Well, yeah,
and
this is
see
your
you at
second
Skull
time
and
on,
Roses.
so there's going to be more.
Maybe we'll do a little mini catch up at Skull and Roses.
That'd be really cool.
just because the Skull and Roses podcasts, are they just little segments with a bunch of people, or
We just do little 25-minute interviews.
Well, whatever really they have time for, because you know how they have to be on.
All
And
right, well, so if we have time, because I'll be running around like a chicken without a head.
I'm working on something special.
Right. So,
Nice.
and thanks you guys. Appreciate your time.
thank you too for
All right.
coming.
Yeah,
Go
thank
simple.
you.
No Simple Road. Thank you.
I love the Jay Blakesberg plug at the end there. That's
Yes.
priceless.
Yay, Jay.
Classy man right there, everybody. And Ricky.
And Jay, your hair's gorgeous. If I didn't tell you while you
all
were
that
here,
vegetarian food,
I'm
man.
telling you now.
You know what? Listening back to just a few minutes that we just listening to, you could re-feel the feeling of having them here at the house.
I was shot out of a cannon.
Yeah, you
I
were.
was
I think we
really-
all were. We were excited
But
that day.
the tone of my voice, I'm so loud and dang. Okay.
Well, I remember we were excited because this was unusually, it was in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day. I got to take off work early, was excited all morning. and then came home. I was worried I wasn't going to get here before them, and I did.
And then he took a photo with like I think our phone or your phone. And it was just dope.
Well,
it was like
I wonder why.
But okay, I know why
Jay.
clearly. But like, it was just like right in our patio. Nobody was dressed up for nothing. Like it was just like, oh, here, let me take a quick little. And it was one of my favorite pictures of us.
Yeah, it's a great pic, man. It went on our Christmas
Jay.
card. Didn't
Yeah, it went on our Christmas card, Jay.
Sure
Thank
did.
you.
Everybody, if that didn't inspire you to do what you're passionate about in this life, I don't know what's going on. Like it just give it a try, man, and just go for it and go balls out.
Times are definitely different, but then that just means that there are different opportunities for you out there.
Yeah, and you know what? Like there's so many different avenues for people to try things now. It's a brand new world every day. And if you've got something that you love doing, you might as well give everything to it. I mean, what do you got to lose? You only live once. And I'm going to tell you something. When you get up into your 50s, you realize that you have less time in front of you than you have in back of you. And that's a weird realization to have. And that makes you want to really do the things that you're passionate about even more. And also realize that you should have done it earlier. So
I wouldn't shit on anybody.
Well, I'm talking about me.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there comes a time when it's time to do the thing that you're passionate about.
That is true.
And this is one of those conversations that's very inspirational. And
I agree.
A true like success story of somebody that's just killed it.
And anything where family rises together is my favorite thing of all. Like, I'm just saying.
Sounds familiar.
And anything worthwhile has its struggles.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely.
That's true. So, you know what? This is the perfect episode to go out of 22 and into 23 with. We will be back next week with a brand new year's worth of stuff for everybody. I hope that all of you party your asses off this weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Have fun. Be safe.
Yes, be safe.
You know, care for each other. Take care of each other. Look out for each other. If you're going to shows, keep an eye on that guy that looks a little too sweaty and bug-eyed and skitsy.
And if you're doing things, test it.
Well, that too.
Like, that's important.
Or don't do anything and stay home and fall asleep before the fireworks. We've done that before, huh, Mel?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We've done that most of our life, to be honest. It's only within the last few years that we've been going out.
We grew up having a friend whose mom paid him to stay home every New Year's.
Really?
Because she was afraid for Henry.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. After we were because back in Vegas, I don't remember what year they banned it, but people used to go to the hospital and a couple deaths happened from people throwing bottles.
Oh.
At New Year's, throwing champagne bottles.
Yeah, I remember that because I worked on the strip.
Bottles.
Me too.
Yeah, it used to be dangerous, and Henry's mom started because that was like early 90s, and he's like, bro, I'm staying home. Like, whatever, dude, you're a bummer. He's like, dude, my mom's giving me $500 to stay home for the night. I was like,
no
okay,
problem,
I'll see you
Mom.
tomorrow, man. We'll party tomorrow. You got $500 now.
Dang.
When I was working for my dad's video company, we filmed on the strip at New Year's one year, and at midnight, it was like mortars. People were just flinging full champagne bottles, flicking them up in the air, man.
By the time it was like I worked on the strip in 98. Right. Yeah. 98, 99. And they stopped letting anybody have glass. So like if you came out of the casino, there was security guards there with paper or not plastic
like
cups.
Solo cups.
And you can pour your drink in and keep going, but you could not bring any glass.
This is so funny. You can't go outside with the glass, but you can bring the alcohol.
Absolutely.
We don't want you to quit having fun, but you guys are animals. You're going to start throwing things and hurting people.
So the point is, be safe out there. Take care of each other. You know what? New Year's Eve is the perfect time to smile at a stranger.
That's right.
Safety third and hydrate, you guys. And you know what? Happy New Year.
And you know what? Go live your dream.
Simple. felony. Just been deferred and hella means. Been the earth and alchemy can bring the birth and melody of a newborn. So persistent, so resistant, so insistent, so commitment, so resilient, or haven't you learned it? No simple road. 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 My windshield is shattered as I focus through the spot in the corner that is still intact. The react is both a defense mechanism as well as a fear. We've traveled this road before, so we may think, but it's a tad bit of strange similarities that feed an A=A complex. The fears of your past do not equal the perplexities of the current road.
Hey listeners, I want to tell you about the April-May 2023 issue of Relix magazine. Features a Dave Matthews Band cover story with additional articles and interviews with The National, Graham Nash, Wayne Shorter, ALO, Ivan Neville, our friend Eric Krasno and Stanton Moore, Marty Stewart, and much more. Check out the latest version of Relix and subscribe now at relix.com/DMB. Thanks, Relix.
Yes, hello out there, everyone. I'm Hal Schwartz.
And I'm Flynn McLean. Together we host None But the Brave, a podcast dedicated to the music and career of Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce and E Street Band are on tour right now for the first time in 6 years, and we're taking a detailed look at what's happening on stage in our bi-weekly episodes.
We've also been recently joined by some very exciting guests, including rock journalist Warren Zanes and Stephen Hayden, Backstreet's magazine founder Charles Cross, and Barstool's Kirk Minahan.
If you're a diehard Springsteen fan, this is the show for you.
So please subscribe to None But the Brave on your favorite podcasting platform, and we hope to see you further on up the road.
Thank you so much. We'll be seeing you.